Welcome to another edition of Cattle Chatter. I'm Susan Littlefield here with the American Ag Network on location. We are at the Nebraska State Fair. My plan was to do this show from the barn as they are in the middle of the open class beef show. But let me tell you, a lot of action, a lot of noise. It was just much easier because I want to be able to hear what Brad has to say about this week's trade. It has been a crazy roller coaster ride. Some chasing of the headlines, how he started out the week, volatility, the basis. There's a lot that we're going to have to unpack in this show box today. As I mentioned him, it's Brad Kooima. He's with Kooima Kooima Varilek out of Sioux Center, Iowa. So let's kind of start out with the rewind and go back to Monday, because I think there was a lot of headline chasing on Monday morning.
There certainly was, Susan. And first of all, thanks for having me on. And just for all you listeners, she almost gave me an out. She said, if you don't want to do this right now,
I did.
Part of me doesn't, but you know what? We're going to do it anyway, because that's the way it is. You know, there's days that are easier to talk about, of course, and days, but the issue is, of course, here you've got to be, if you're part of the market, you got to be able to be, you're in it and you have to react. And, you and I have talked over and over about, when you've got a market that's this high, $8 corn, that's the one thing that this reminds me of the same almost euphoric type mentality that people had when corn was 8, right? It was going to go to 10. It was never going to go down again. But yes, let's retrace our steps. Monday we walked in and guy said, what do you think? And I said, I don't know, $5 lower. And they went, really? I go, well, yeah, I do. Cattle and feed report was disappointing. We got the market has to assimilate this dude from Maryland that has the first human form of the screwworm thing in the United States, which doesn't really, that really doesn't have anything to do with, we know that. Mm-hmm. But you remember swine flu? I do. Consumption went straight down because people thought somehow if you ate bacon, you were going to get the flu or something, So, and then the headline algorithms that react to certain phrases and headlines. And so we did tank on the opening. We had feeder cattle down $9 and the fat cattle were down 5 or 6 for a while. But again, this very resilient market came crawling back to only close modestly lower. In some cases, some of the months were higher, and you had to go like, holy cow, that this thing's a tank. You can't hurt it, right? And gapped higher Tuesday, follow through yesterday, didn't close great yesterday. It came way off and say like, ooh. And then we had the 20 deliveries, and I think that set a kind of a soft undertone. And the deliveries were, we can talk about it, and I think that's what we need to segue into. And that is basis. Okay. Yep. People, the basis has been consistently one way forever. Okay. And well, for a year. The cash in the North has been much, much, much higher, at times $20 higher at times than the futures market. Even the South that doesn't know how to sell cattle, where the cash market there was significantly higher. So you had this inversion in the basis, continue to give you incentive, right, to sell the cattle if you're a hedger, especially because of the positive basis. And you look at the market, you say, well, the market thinks we're going lower apparently because it's much cheaper than the cash is. So I'm going to keep selling. It gives you further incentive to stay current. That changed, and that changed yesterday. August cattle got all the way up to 246 something for a while. The best cash in the South was 242, and that was on a handful, mostly a 240 market. Even in the North, the best cash last Friday was 245, and so all of a sudden it's like that should have been a big warning flag. I thought, and then unfortunately we caught, and rightly so probably, we catch 20 deliveries in Syracuse, Kansas this morning, because that was, in this feedlot's opinion, that was their best bid. And if they're only getting bid 240 and the futures closed at 243.5 yesterday, that is his best bid. So that, unfortunately, with the market function of the market a little bit here, it is playing out. So now on to tomorrow. Now the market has been extremely resilient. We haven't had 2 sharply lower days in a row for a long time. A lot of that leadership has come out of the feeder cattle pit, Susan. We'll see. feeder cattle were pretty sloppy today, but I think that's something that we're going to need to keep an eye on here tomorrow. And well, then we got a long weekend. Another reason for some profit taking, huh?
I was just going to ask you, how does, the fact that we will trade tomorrow, we'll probably see some cash maybe develop sometime tomorrow. Then you've got a 3-day weekend and come into a short trading week. And it's a post Labor Day, end of summer feel that everybody seems to always want to talk about.
We're at that easy, huh?
Yeah, no kidding.
After going up as much as this one has, after being as overbought as this one is, this cattle market, going into a long weekend, it would just be common sense that you would expect some profit taking, some of the longs taking their money, right? And I'm sure that that's part of what happened here today. There was a lot of volatility in a couple of months here today, and I think that there's also something going on a little bit with scrambling to stay even with some option strategies that may or may not be out there. But I would expect there could very easily be more profit taking if I was a betting guy, which obviously in this business, I suppose there's some form of that, right? I would guess that you'd be a little lower tomorrow. And now the other thing about Labor Day that you mentioned is well said. The other day I looked back, I think I had to go back something like 23 or 24 years to find a September where box beef did not go down. So yeah, there's a strong seasonal for the boxes to go down this time of year. Now, there's always that exception, just like the guy on your slow pitch team hasn't had a hit for a year and a half, but who knows? He might actually hit one. So I'm not saying it's a guaranteed lock. I mean, boxes are way above 400. I mean, it's COVID's the only other time we've ever been above 400. So but again, I hate to be that guy, but for 2 weeks here or 3, we've been talking about be careful, be careful, be careful. And so nothing happened here today to make me feel any different about that. August cattle down $6.25 today. And feeder cattle are down over 300 on some of the months. So it can go down. We'll see. Usually what's happened before is the strength in the cash feeder cattle trade has supported the feeder cattle futures market. But we'll see. August went off today, the August feeder, so we don't have anything real closely tied to that index as we've had in the last couple of weeks.
I was going to ask you about having to kind of wave the yellow flag per se, because cautiousness, and we talked about this a little bit in depth last week, so I encourage people to go back and rewatch last week's episode to hear about it. But this cautiousness, what do we do? How do we, there's still a lot of emotion tied to this, because I think of these young cattle guys, they haven't seen prices like this ever in their operations of doing cattle. And then here we sit, the older guys are like, okay, here we go.
This is what I fear, because I want to make people enjoy our program. I don't want them to,
No.
I get it. People watch stuff because hopefully it makes you feel a little better, or if it doesn't make you feel any smarter, which who knows whether I could, make anybody any smarter. I doubt it. But so let's say you're a hedger. Here's the conundrum of the hedger. Okay. So you hedge a nice profit on the way up here somewhere. And if you're not a hedger, you're selling cattle today that are making a lot of money. Okay. I feed cattle. I know what these closeouts look like. So now if you've got a closeout that makes this much instead of this much, now you're going to turn around and what are you going to do? You're going to come back and buy some break evens that are about, as of today, maybe $5, $6, $8 above where futures are. It's very, very difficult. So this set of cattle up here that you buy today, could they lose $500 a head? Yes. And if you just made only 150, that's enough to tip the scale. And I don't have the answer for you, but I think, it starts with, you got to, if you're going to have to look at the long run here a little bit and say, well, okay, my risk factor is $100 a head. Well, then we're going to have to figure out a way to cover $100 a head loss. And that's going to be some high priced options probably, or selling a call on top of a nearby output, or there's strategies we can come up with. If your risk point's 200 or whatever it is, you're going to have to, because what I worry about is if we don't do that here, if the market tips over, and I don't know if it's going to, it will sometime. But when that thing does, I'm afraid that's the customer, that's the young guy, the small to medium sized guy that'll become a casualty in that market. And those are the people that buy the kids sheep at the ribbon auction at your county fair. Those are the guys that are writing checks for your local hospital. Those are the ones that are contributing to the churches and the schools. Yeah, getting pretty deep here, isn't it? Sorry.
That's all right.
That's my community. That's what we feed. We got guys that feed 2,000-3,000 cattle, right? And father son deal, and that's what makes this community so strong. You don't need another 250,000 head feedlot. They're going to buy 7 payloaders from some outfit in El Paso or something. It's enough. I'm sorry. I'm depressing you. Be careful. The great market's been fantastic. The numbers are still tight, but we got to manage our risk.
My granddad always said tomorrow's a new day.
Absolutely.
What's the best way for folks to get a hold of you, Brad?
The bar. Just kidding. KKVtrading.com or 712-722-0023. And ask for Joe. Just kidding. Anyway, ask for any of us.
You just put the human aspect on everything that just has been happening in this cattle market. So good job.
Well, I care about it and the customers. So it's what it is. Thanks for having me on.
Yep. Brad Kooima joining us for another edition of Cattle Chatter.
The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading.